How about now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Uh, oh, can you? Oh gosh, damn! This is I. Oh, you can hear. Oh, you can hear. Okay, Lexi says she can hear. Okay, perfect. All right. Okay. Well, I'm very very sorry for that false start. My microphone seems to have been off, but I appreciate the chat for letting me know. So I will start all over again. I go by the name of Heinz, your friendly neighborhood ketchup man. Thank you again for so much for watching and tuning in for another episode of the Ketchup Quad podcast, where we do trial recaps and also trial discussions. Apologies for the technical difficulties. I'll do my best to try and to try and speed up what we have, because like I was saying before, the technical difficulties is that we are going to be going through the full witnesses that has been presented so far, because we have heard that the state is likely going to rest their case tomorrow. I don't know if they're going to bring on any more witnesses. It seems unlikely. It seems like the same thing that happened in Liberty County with the whole Nicholas Casotis case. Maybe this is a Georgia thing where they don't rest until the next day. Maybe that's what goes on in Georgia. I have no idea. But essentially, that's what we're going to be going through. Before we go through the full recap and today's recap, I just want to say that there was a couple of rulings made today. Well, not rulings, but the judge. It seems to me that the prosecution are unable to argue the aggravated assault for some reason. I was trying to keep up with the arguments, and it seems to me that they're only sticking with felony murder. I'm not sure. It doesn't seem like they're gonna close off with malice murder. So I think it's just malice murder and felony murder that they're gonna go with. It doesn't seem. It doesn't seem like they're gonna. Sorry. It doesn't seem like they're going to be continuing on with the aggravated assault claim. So yeah. So I don't know what's going on there with the states. It's shenanigans over here that we've seen from day one. So it seems weird to me. But anyway, I'm gonna continue on. For those that don't know this case or have no idea about this case, I'll just give a quick background. Melissa Wolfenbarger has been alleged to have been in a abusive relationship with Christopher Wolfenbarger, and her remains was found on April 29th, 1999, and the rest of all of her remains was found on June 1999. She was misidentified at first, but in 2003 she was properly identified to be Melissa Wolfenbarger. Her husband Christopher Wolfenbarger has been arrested in connection with her murder. They believe that he was the one that did it because when they first interviewed him, he had essentially said that Melissa had traveled away, so he thought that was the end of it, that she just basically moved on with her life. But we're now here on trial, and we've heard from a total of 22 witnesses. And yeah, I'm gonna go and give you a recap of all 22 witnesses that has been presented. On day one, we heard from Judge George McCarran, and he was the person to have found the head of Melissa. This was on the 29th of April. Then we heard from Dale Kelly, who, if you remember from our day one coverage, which you can catch all of our coverage, if you look in the description, it has a link for you to see the playlist. But nonetheless, Dale Kelly, he testified to there being missing files from his report. We heard more about these missing files as well. Today we're going to go through that, but nonetheless, Dale Kelly testified to missing files from his report, testified to there being a VHS tape, which we heard more testimony from on day 4. Regarding that, an insinuation. I'm gonna get to that. Then we heard from Tina Miller, who was on the scene. She was assigned for the missing person, to identify missing people in cold cases, essentially. Then we heard from Tina Patton, who was the sister of the victim. She testified to incidents where she suspected domestic violence against her sister Melissa under the hands of Christopher. She testified to having seen bruises on her neck, and asked Melissa if Christopher had done that to her. She also gave testimony, I believe, on cross-examination regarding her testimony. Her memory was called under question, essentially because she told the police one thing in regards to what Melissa told her, where she overtly said in the 2001 interview with the police, she said that Melissa had told her that Chris had been abusing her, that it was Chris that was choking her. However, in the courtroom in the courtroom on day 1, she said that she was afraid to tell Chris, and not just that, she said that not just that she was afraid to tell Chris, but also she was telling her, don't report. So based on this inconsistent statements, you get the idea that maybe she's embellishing a little bit, or she's trying to fit a theory. Basically, that's what I thought when I was giving that recap. So on day 2, we heard from Ronald Brock, who was Chris's former employer, and also Cynthia Brock, who was Chris's former employer. They both testified to Chris having borrowed their saw. Ronald specifically gave testimony in regards to the vandalism of the company vehicle, so they had to let Chris go. There was talk in regards to the saw not being returned to the business from Chris. Then we heard from Dorothy Cooley, who was the neighbor, and she had the longest rap sheet. The cross-examination was brutal because she testified to hearing disturbances around when she was living there, and she also said that there was an incident around the 21st of July, I believe, that she saw, and she basically saw bruises on Melissa. However, on cross-examination, it was shown that she was actually locked up and had multiple convictions around that time that resulted in jail time. So she could not have seen around the time that she had said that she had seen Christopher. The most interesting part of her testimony that came out was where she testified that when she was inspecting Christopher's house, I believe it was Christopher's house, around February 1999, that there were no female clothes left. It was only male clothes, and Christopher had already moved out by this time. He had already left. So based on that testimony, Christopher was not living in the area anymore, and he had already left. So it's really important, that testimony, based on a lot that has come out. So something I forgot to say at the intro as well. I just want to say I'm gonna go through the timeline as well. So I'm gonna go through a timeline that I've put together in regards to this when we get to the end of the stream. So do stick around. Then we heard testimony from Marlon Sutton, who was the respondent of the DV call, and he basically testified to responding to the DV call that was made to Melissa's residence. This was on to be honest, no one knows the date or the time. So I don't know if it was June or July. Like the time was unreadable because he concluded that it was 10 minutes 10 minutes of receiving the call that he arrived at the scene. It was a hot mess. I had a lot of reservations to this testimony, so there was nothing I could do with it because we don't even know when this call apparently occurred. It could have been literally a year, 2 years before the whole DV hearing that they had on the 22nd of July 1998. Anyway, moving on, we heard testimony from Stephen O'Hare. Before I do move on, I just remembered. He made notes, and he being Marlon Sutton, he made notes in regards to observing injuries on Melissa, observing injuries to her back, to her legs. He made notes of these injuries, but something that was done on cross-examination was quite masterful because it leaves the idea that we don't know whether she told them that she had those injuries or whether he inspected the injuries himself. His notes were not quite clear. There was no notes of him actually doing a search on her body to ascertain whether these injuries were visible on her. So that was a pretty good cross-examination. Also, the defense were also highlighting that the defense was also highlighting that there was likely a break-in because things were stolen. So we don't even know if the injuries came from the DV or whether it was because she had been robbed and was a victim of an attack from the robbery. So again, this goes back to his note taking and not making sure to get the relevant details for a domestic violence call, like the date, for example. Then we move on to the detective Stephen O'Hare, who was the arresting officer of for Chris. His body cam came in where they done the arrest. Chris was seen hiding on the body cam, so that was an important piece of information to get into the evidence from the state. Then we heard from Norman Patton, who was Melissa's mother. Let me tell you, I believe it was on day 3 where a lot of fireworks came out, but on day 2, she just basically gave the foundation. She basically testified to what was happening with the domestic violence hearing that they had, why it was dismissed, why likely it was dismissed, because on the 29th, apparently, Melissa and Chris were talking, and from then the judge had dismissed it. We got to learn on day 4, I believe, on the cross-examination of Jarion Shepherd, that it was actually the judge that told them to go and talk, and then the dismissal followed afterwards. So it wasn't as if Anyway, I have always had my reservations in regards to how the prosecution was handling this case, because not only did we not have a timeline, but we don't even know if Melissa and Christopher were talking for many days before this dismissal, what was happening, there was no questions to basically find out, hey, Norma, did you witness these two talking before this date? At least give the idea that there was not, at least close the door that she could have seen these people talking beforehand or something, or something like that. They didn't ask Tina in regards to this whole hearing whether Chris and her were basically talking. There was a lot to be desired that I felt they could have done, but the state could have done better. Anyway, moving on. Melissa was also arrested around this time in September, rearrested again in November. This all came out on the cross-examination on day 3. So on day 3. So we also heard testimony from before moving on. Yes, we heard the cross-examination in which gave furtherance to the third-party theory, which we know that there was, not only were the patterns serial killers, and not only did she testify to helping him commit the murders, having immunity from that. Like I said before, even if you were to disregard all of that, they were hanging out with the victims of the murders that Carl Patton had done. And we also heard on testimony that the Pattons used to kill for insurance money. We heard testimony as well from Norma Patton that she was essentially doing this. She said this. She was essentially trying to find justice for Melissa. She went to the DA to do what she did because she wanted to free Carl Patton. We heard that, and she was happy to get him parole. She was ecstatic. She basically wanted parole for him, which was the main driver of this. We commented on that as well. I'm not gonna go through all of that, but giving you the idea, if you really want to know why there's a high likelihood that Christopher is going to may be acquitted of this, it would be my guess from that testimony, because like I said, Eric being their friend and also being a victim of Carl Patton is a very, very likely reason to want to kill Melissa, especially with the fact that he also molested Melissa before in the past. That is grudge right there. That is the someone that could be seeking revenge. Then we heard from Thomas Dixon. This is day 3, who was the supervisor at Waffle House, and he testified to having an affair with Melissa. He also gave testimony in regards to not knowing whether Melissa was pregnant or not, that he was actually careful. We heard testimony in regards to him seeing marks on Melissa, that Melissa used to tell him about the domestic violence that she suffered in the hands of Christopher. So this was while they were having their affair. He said that the affair began at fall. Again, I believe the failing of the prosecution here is just not inquiring for, was that September, October, November, or what year, for example. I had to guess and be like, okay, based on the testimony I've heard, this is probably 1998. But Melissa has been working at Waffle House since 1997. We don't know when all of this happened. So there was a lot more to be desired from his testimony. We also heard that he committed a bank robbery in 2010 and was convicted. One bank he robbed, one. So so that was the bulk of his testimony. Then we heard from Christina Garrett. She did not offer much. She was the daughter of Melissa. The main thing that I could gather from her testimony was the fact that she said something about about Christopher's license or something like that, about him saying that they're not gonna find him because of the addresses. Who is the they? No one knows. Could this be law enforcement? Could this be Carl Patton, who he knows at this point was in connection with the murder? Like, he was convicted at this point from 2003. So could he be talking about him and the Pattons? Who knows? Who actually knows? But nothing was clear from her testimony. There was no real value outside the funeral that she said that she attended or with the Pattons when they done a casket that didn't even include a body. So that was the bulk of her testimony for the prosecution. Then we heard from Alton Calhoun, who was the investigator, the original investigator that took over the case from, I believe it was Kelly, who was the first lead investigator. He took up the case. He took up the case from him, and he done interviews with Christopher. He also done interviews with Norma Patton, and he made a statement about the cadaver dogs being used. However, the next witness that was up on day 4 said that the cadaver dogs were not actually used. So that witness was Leanne Lacoste. Anyway, but on day 4, we heard from Pete Ricketts, who was handling all of the missing persons. He was handling the missing person report that was given by the Pattons. He was also instrumental in the proper identification of Melissa, because he was the one to have put in the dental records into the system, so to aid the investigation. That was the bulk of his testimony. Nothing really much stuck out from that. Then we heard from Richard Stein. Then we heard from Leanne Lacoste again. Her testimony was just to verify what was going on that day when they were out with the cadaver dogs, because she knew more about that area because it was her area to handle. And essentially, she said that the cadaver dogs never made a search. Then we heard from Richard Stein, who was the investigator for the 2021 case that has now been brought to with Chris. In fact, his testimony was quite funny, because on cross-examination, he said that they'd done a new batch of DNA testing, and they came back with 2 male profiles from the DNA testing, and they excluded Chris from both of those profiles. So why? It makes you think, so did you test the other 2 main profiles? If not, why wouldn't you test the other two profiles to ascertain who could have been responsible for this particular crime? It makes no sense that they excluded Chris but still went after him. So if they're trying to get over that reasonable doubt, I don't think they cleared it, because there was no redirect after this. It was so weird to me. Then we heard from Jarion Shepard, who was after Richard Stein, and he was essentially giving testimony. I'm gonna go through the if we have enough time today. I believe we will, because it was a half day today, so there's not enough to go through. But I'm gonna go back and replay a part of his cross-examination that I forgot to play on the last stream, on day 4 recap. Yesterday's stream, of how he just basically undermined his own case and tried to save face at the end of it. But we are gonna go through it. Then Dr. Mary Beth Hopty, who was the forensic odontologist. She's basically a dentist, but she also worked. But her qualifications requires her to be a dentist before she can become a forensic odontologist. She was essentially the person that correctly identified Melissa, and that was the bulk of her testimony. Just the groundwork that was done to identify properly identify Melissa. Then we heard from Dr. Mark Gilbo, who was the anthropologist. He was the one that was identifying her through the bones, and the key part that came out of his testimony was how they misidentified the skull the first time around, and also the lack of DNA. How it would have been the responsibility of the people before him to have made sure that the DNA was properly tested before sending it over to him. So the chain of command breaking down was the most beneficial part of his testimony, because it shows that there was so many mishandling in this case that there's no possible way that Christopher could have been identified from this. So that is the bulk of the testimonies leading up to today. So let me give you today's witnesses. Michael Sprinkle. Sprinkle is a funny name, man. Michael Sprinkle. He's a deputy DA. He came in. All he did was just give an audio and went out. So his testimony was super quick. But the audio, I am surprised that he came in. I am extremely surprised that he came in. But I'm gonna talk about that later. Rosa James was an IPV consultant. She came in to testify in regards to as an expert, I should say, in regards to the cycle of abuse, why people in abusive relationships would do certain things. So that was the bulk of her testimony. Then the last witness up for today was Dr. Carol Terry, who was a chief medical examiner back in 1999 in connection with this case. So so before I do continue, I just want to urge everyone to hit that like button. Let me know how you're feeling. As well in the chat. Let me know how you're feeling in the chat. If you're a lurker, it's okay. It's okay. You can lurk, but just say hi and then go back to lurking. Just say, welcome to the stream, Jay Stolly. I see you. Welcome. But yeah, I'm glad some of the winners today. I don't know what the prosecution are thinking either, because the DV expert didn't really help them, in my opinion. But we're gonna go through all of it. Like I mentioned, Michael Sprinkle. I don't know how the judge allowed the audio in. Apparently, it wasn't. I thought it wouldn't be allowed in because it was unintelligible on our end. But I gave the judge a bit of grace. I looked at it as for maybe the audio's being picked up by the feed. It's not great. Maybe they can hear it in court, but apparently it was not even audible in court either. So the judge allowing it in is a bit weird, because I could not hear anything. It was literally like hearing Charlie Brown's speaker talk, Charlie Brown's teacher, so to say, talk, because I couldn't make out anything. I heard the audio. The jury might be given headphones to listen to it properly. Maybe they can pick up so many things, but this is the danger of doing that. Well, the danger of doing that I can anticipate is just that they are going to make inferences based on what's said, and you don't know what those inferences are going to lead them to. So again, the judge may have heard what was said and thought, okay, we can let it in. But if this is the bar, I think that's really low, because the audios, at least compared to the audios that we've heard so far, wasn't the greatest of audios, but I felt at least the audios from Jarion Shepherd's testimony, Jarion Shepherd's interview, and Carol Block, the blocks, when they were listening, at least we can make out what they were saying. It wasn't the best quality, but this one was significantly worse. So I felt that a proper benchmark would have been using those audios and being like, those were bad, but we can still hear it. And even the judge herself said that she couldn't hear the audio. So I felt like this may have been a bad ruling, in my opinion, but I'm not the judge. I have no idea what she heard. Maybe she just heard a tiny bit and thought, okay, that's enough. There was no cross examination after this, and the witness was basically excused. Then we heard from Rosa James, who was the IPV consultant, and she testified to being a researcher and a consultant regarding sexual violence, intimate partner violence, and has experience of working with the intimate partner violence movement since 2012. She also gave her education history as well. She explained the differentiation between the word survivors and victims. I felt like this was needed because the victims here would be the deceased. So she says that victims in their language also means those that are fallen from due to domestic violence. So survivors would be the ones that have essentially survived the domestic violence. She explains why someone would remain in an abusive relationship, and she says that fear plays a huge role in this, and wanting to protect their kids and also protect their family would cause them to stay. I mean, this interview, I mean, if you're the juror listening to this, you obviously are going to have a natural inference to think, hey, maybe Chris maybe Chris was controlling her because he had kids. Maybe he was doing all of this because, maybe she was afraid to leave because the kids were because the kids were in the picture. She also explains the power and control will and what each terminology from the will means. We're not going to go through all of that, but she basically broke down every terminology and how it would work in an IPV scenario. And she also explains the hero component of the power and control wheel, and that a perpetrator uses this particular status as a hero if they have done something positive in a victim's life, for example. And she gave examples to this. We're gonna listen to we are gonna go listen to a few snippets in regards to this.
That because I don't want you to go over there, right? I want to maintain that power and control, so I'm judging everything you do.
All right, a bit too far ahead.
As the judger, hero, I'm here to save this family, and I'm here to save you from yourself. When we think about the judger, let's go back to the hero. I have saved you, and then as the judger, you may say, the survivor may say, oh, now I want to connect with my family again. I feel like it's time. I think forgiveness is the right answer. Then I'm going to judge you for that, right? No, why would I save you from them? Why would you go to some place where they hurt you? Why would you interact with people who harmed you? I saved you from that. So I'm judging you in that because I don't want you to go over there, right? I want to maintain that power and control. So I'm judging everything you do when it comes to seeking outside support. And then the victim is, this is a basic answer of the victim. The survivor is now, perpetrator is like the perpetrator playing the victim. The survivor says, I'm leaving the relationship. This is not healthy for me. And then we play the victim role. Like, what did I do to you? I saved you, and now you're trying to leave me. I deserve closure. I deserve these things because I am the victim here. And you're leaving me for no reason, right? You're leaving me for no reason. I did all these things for you. It exerts this level of guilt that can keep a survivor in the relationship as well.
Yeah, so I felt like that testimony is going to, again, it's just going to have a negative influence on Christopher, because end of the day, they know the facts of going from the home that Melissa grew up with. They know already that Melissa had given custody of the kids to the Wolfenbargers. So they're gonna feel like the only reason why he did that was because he had power and control over her. So the only reason why Melissa would give custody to the parents is because she feels like he's a hero in that situation. And if he tried to leave, or if she tried to leave in this scenario, what's going to happen is that there's going to be a lot of guilt tripping based on what she just testified. There's going to be, all of this plays also into the part of the breakup that Norma Patton testified to, that they're broken up around the time of August and then got back together around the time of September. That breakup is basically playing to this dynamic, that's likely why he had gotten back with her. So a lot there to chew on, even though they're not putting the name of the person based on the facts. And you kind of gotta commend the prosecution's strategy here to put her lost, because it's just gonna be just inferences, a lot of inferences that you can only get from her testimony if you know the facts. If they put her on first, I doubt that you even remember half of the stuff that you said. In fact, the jury might even have dismissed her if they put her on at the start. But putting her on at the end, when you have already presented their case, kind of makes sense. At the same time, you would have thought as well, at least this is where I believe that the state are all over the place, because I would have thought, well, it's better to have put Jarian Shepherd, if this was their strategy, it's better to put Jarian Shepherd after her. That would have made sense then the medical examiner. But end of the day, yeah, the reason why I say that is because he's gonna relay all the facts back. So, but I do see their play as well. He relayed the facts yesterday. It's gonna be fresh in the jury's mind. Then all you can do is basically infer from those facts that was relayed yesterday. Let's continue on. She explains what a protective order is. She also explains what isolation was and how perpetrators use this to control their victims. And she also explains this by giving an example of survivors being unable to create their own community. She also gave testimony in regards to not knowing about this case and coming in blindly as an expert and only giving a scholastic framework. And she also presents this part, in my opinion, I thought just opened the door for the defense to do what they did in cross-examination, which we are going to listen to. Before I play this part, I just want to say I just want to read this. Rufan says, what this lady testified to today had nothing to do with this case, playing on the jury's sympathy. I do see, I agree with what you're saying. And I also think that it's kind of a cheat. It's kind of a backdoor way to try and prosecute this case. And I'm pretty sure the jury instructions is going to instruct them. Actually, I'm not sure what the jury instructions is going to be for this case. So I'm gonna eagerly wait until tomorrow to see how it might be interpreted. But from what I understand, her testimony cannot, it might not even be legally valid. Like, I firmly believe that they only brought her in so that it can, so that the juries can get an inference of what might have happened and put scenarios in their heads that may not have been introduced into evidence. That's what I thought her testimony was worth.
Hypothetically, if a survivor gives full custody of her children to the perpetrator's mother, can that in some way be used to exert some form of power control over a perpetrator?
Your Honor,
over a survivor.
I'm sorry. I object to this kind of using evidence and posing it as a hypothetical to specifically ask her opinion of that specific conduct.
Understood. Overruled. Go ahead.
Do you need me to rephrase? Yes. Sure. Hypothetically, if a survivor gives full custody of her children to a perpetrator's mother, can that be used in some way to exert some form of power and control over that survivor? Yes. How? So if the perpetrator's parents now have the children, they have control of the children. They make choices for the children, and that leaves the survivor powerless in that situation unless the survivor navigates to comply with the current guardian's requests, the current guardian's recommendations. It could lead to an imbalance of power from that parent. So yes, that can be definitely a form of exerting power and control.
So, at least we see the contrast on how expert witnesses are treated in different counties, because we know that if this was Judge Bev's courtroom, they may not even allow that question to come in. But then again, it's a state, so it may have been allowed to come in, and the defense could not do anything about it. But the point, but I see why he objected, because end of the day, the fact, using loose facts from the case, because the custody went to Christopher Wolfenbarger's parents, not Christopher. That is a very important distinction, because we have heard from their daughter that it was the parents that essentially raised them. That Christopher also played a part in that, but it was mainly, at least the guardianship, from what I understand, because we don't actually have the full knowledge from this case, but for what I understand, the guardianship was actually to Kathy Wolfenbarger, that has been a testimony that I heard from Norma Patton. So putting it in this scenario like this just distorts what the jury have heard, or at least presents them with an uneven or unclear idea, because it really does matter if the parents went to the grandparents, well, not grandparents, well, the parents of Christopher Wolfenbarger, or if we went to Christopher himself, because these guys were still teenagers at this point. They got married. They said they got married at 1995, 1996. This would be when she was 17, 18. So how would he have full custody of the kids? He would need guardians. At least that's my understanding of all of this. So anyway, because this door was open by the prosecution when they asked this question, the defense, they went full gun ho. They basically brought up different scenarios to show how the jury should disregard everything that she's saying, because she doesn't even know this case and she's not testifying to the facts of this case. They brought up this. It began with the defense highlighting that abusers can't be put into a box and different abusers react differently. That there are some scenarios where the parents are abusive and that doesn't create abusers. Some scenarios where the parents are not abusive and yet it creates abusers. That nothing is basically set in stone. The defense also highlights that you can be abusive to children, and I believe the fact that he asked this question was really important. I would have loved if he asked what's the difference between DV and IPV, but this question at least broadens the understanding between IPV and DV, because IPV is a component, or it is part of DV, but it's not the full umbrella, because DV literally has many forms. We saw from the Ali case that the violence from the parents to Fatima Ali was classified as domestic violence. So that's not necessarily a partner, and that changes the dynamics completely. So I do like the fact that he highlighted this and give a nuanced idea, at least to throw the jury off and think, wait, you can, is IPV part of, abusing children as well? Things like that. The defense also highlights that there are some people that suffer from PTSD and other abusive and other mental defects, and that doesn't make them abusers, or it can affect them as abusers. She agreed to this fact. The defense also asks her if the root cause of IPV could be infidelity, and she explains that the cause of IPV is mainly for choice, rather is mainly by choice, rather than it being a root cause or it being a driver to commit DV, like cheating, for example. So so this, in my opinion, this question was gold, because it took away the idea that he committed this DV because it was because she was cheating. Because as the expert says, no, it's a choice. It's not like if someone is cheating, that doesn't mean that they're gonna commit DV, or that doesn't mean that the abuser is gonna commit DV. So I felt like there was a lot of value to be attained from that testimony. And on redirect, we never saw any kind of questions pertaining to someone cheating in a relationship. The defense also went through a list asking our questions in regards to the wills and in regards to the will and scenarios relating to the case. And I thought, based on the build up, and let me go back to this part though, because this part, I believe, was probably the best question to ask.
General, yes, it's a diagnosis.
Yeah. And PTSD can be
That's
caused
not
by
it.
a variety of things, correct? Not just above the partners. The partners being, and what was the other word? Driver, you said? What was you said instead of victim, we call them?
Survivors.
Survivor, and so I'm looking at the generation of both you in their head, correct?
Yes.
And so what I was asking then was, is it sometimes the case that the parents of either the abuser or the survivor are abusive to them? You can be abusive to your children.
Yes.
We wouldn't call that abuse unless it went. I guess some parents are guilty of crimes, right? Parents of the partners you're looking at.
Yes.
You ever had a case, or do you have any experience in a case where the partners, the alleged abuser and the alleged survivor, the people you're looking at, that one of them is the child of a serial murderer?
No.
Would that be unusual?
I can't answer that in
Would
this
that
context.
fit, I'm sorry.
I can't answer that
Would
for
that-
you. I'm sorry.
Would that fit the dynamic that you're looking at, or would that be kind of outside the wheel and have to try to figure out what's going on there?
It sounds like out of the scope.
Yeah.
So that just, I mean, if it wasn't undermined a lot, it just basically goes to show that will does not cover or cannot account for every scenario. That's the value of that cross-examination, that the will does not account or cannot account for this particular idea, that being from a household of serial killers, how would that apply to the will, and how would that play in an IPB scenario? And she couldn't even give any testimony in regards to that. So I thought the defense scored a lot of points there.
Folks.
You
Yes.
call them spokes.
This is when the defense went through all of what they did, all of the build up that they done to basically sell their main point, and what I'm trying to say is that the defense did all of that to bring up every scenario that we have heard in this case and have it eliminated from consideration, because this expert has no idea what the case is, or what or how these scenarios that is being brought up against her could factor into a DV scenario.
But I'm looking at the triangles as pieces of pie. Maybe that's because I'm thinking of food. But
Sure.
and each of these pieces of pie have lists of examples of how intimidation is used, how emotional abuse is used, isolation, minimizing children, privilege, economic abuse. Did Ms. Hilton review this with you and say, let's see how many of these factors we can find in our case?
No.
Have you talked to her about it before?
I spoke with her about the power and control will, yes.
Okay. Did she talk to you about the fact that we are not involved in this case with ruining or destroying property? Are you aware of any evidence of that in this case, either through hypothetical questions or what you were told by the DA's office?
No, I'm not aware of any of
Anything
that.
to do with abusing pets?
I'm not aware of any.
Anything dealing with displaying weapons?
No.
Are you aware of any weapons in this case at all?
No, I'm not aware.
Okay. Are you aware of anything involving humiliation or playing games or anything like that?
No.
Are you aware of anything involving controlling what you do and what you read? Anything like that? Huh?
No.
Yeah. Are you aware of anything about joking about abuse? Do you know anything about that, or any hypotheticals asked you about that?
No, I don't know any.
Anything about shifting blame onto you?
No.
Anything about making you feel guilty about your kids?
No.
You know how old the kids are in this case?
No,
You know how old they are? You talked about a hypothetical of placing kids with the supposed abuser's parents as being a sign of control. How about if the kids are like 6 months old and they're placed with the man's parents?
I have no knowledge of how old the kids are in this case.
Important distinction. Important distinction.
Any evidence of using a 6-month-old or a 1-year-old to relay messages?
No.
Using visit.
I just want to say, Games, I appreciate you gifting yourself the membership. I'm with you on this one. I never actually thought that it was possible to gift yourself. But yeah, I appreciate that. And it seems like Rufan has become a new member as well. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in and for becoming members. I will, in regards to the memberships, I'm going to do an announcement because I do want to start doing exclusive movie reviews, like not really highly edited or anything like that, but mainly just of true crime movies that I do watch or true crime shows that I do watch. Just do off the cuff reviews of what I think of it and give it as exclusive memberships. So but yeah, when you are on the Heinz Condiment Island memberships, you do get emojis as well as early access to new videos. So I appreciate those that are members, and I hope that you are enjoying them. Rufan send memberships. I appreciate. This is becoming funny because Rufan is now the member, gifted herself a membership. So that's. But anyway, thanks for sending your memberships, Rufan. Oh gosh, this is too funny. YouTube seems to be glitching. Anyways, yeah. So this cross-examination was masterful because it brought in evidence that's not even in the case for consideration, and she said that she didn't even know about that. So of course she wouldn't know about it. She doesn't know the case. But the most important part that he was trying to get to, despite not knowing the important part of the case, is the fact that she testified to the kids being separated, and is brought in here that it was given to the parents rather than him, which just breaks down her whole testimony and removes from the juror's mind that there was possible power and control going on here if the parents were the one to gain custody.
No.
Using visitation?
No.
I'm kind of going through your wheel, but you know that, right? Any evidence of treating the person like a servant?
No.
Being the one to define gender roles?
No.
Using race, culture, religion, or citizenship against one another?
No.
Preventing anybody from getting a job?
No.
Are you aware that Ms. Wolfenbarger was working at Waffle House?
No. I don't know.
You were asked about isolation. Would you describe isolation as having an outside job, having friends, having your sister working with you? Is that isolation?
Depending on depending on what the domestic violence looks like I said, every relationship is unique. Isolation doesn't fit in a box where it has to be one thing.
Right, but if the point of isolation is to prevent you from having, recourse to friends or communities, I think you said committees or whatever it is, you have a sister, you have a job, you have co-workers, that's not isolation, is it?
It could be for some relationships. I don't know any examples of that.
Okay.
I haven't interviewed anyone in this case.
Yeah, the problem with hypotheticals is if you add a few more facts, they get more and more confusing, right?
No.
Well, I just gave you more facts dealing with isolation. You said, well, I just don't know about that.
It wasn't confusing. I said that I haven't interviewed anyone in the case. So I just can't speak to that.
Well, in I'm not asking about your experience, I'm asking about your expertise. Would you describe that as being isolation?
It all depends on the nature of the relationship.
And the fact that she can't give a straight answer in regards to isolation just shows, at least it brings home the point that he made when he was laying the foundation for this particular type of questioning that he's now giving. It gives you the idea that everything that he just testified to, that she just testified to, sorry, in regards to isolation cannot just be taken on as face value. As she just said, it really depends. But they know that in this case that she was working freely, so of course that doesn't apply here. They know that she was also seeing other family members. She wasn't she was living with him, but she wasn't, her movement was not restricted, is basically what I'm trying to say. They haven't had evidence from the states to suggest that her movements were restricted. In fact, the way that he's done the cross-examination has kind of backfired in the face of the prosecution, because a lot of the stuff that she testified to, as highlighted by the defense, is not even in evidence to be presented to suggest that he was actually doing most of the things, or even some of the things that are on this will. We haven't heard any. The only thing that we've heard is that there was a possible incident of DV where on the 21st of July, which led to the TPO being given, and that's it. And it was likely violent. So that's the only testimony that we've heard. Then we heard that temporary protective order was dismissed. We also heard in regards to a battery incident, a domestic battery that was supposed to be that she was supposed to go to on the 15th of March 1999, sorry, and she didn't show for that one. So those are the only evidence that we have. But nothing here kind of demonstrates this cycle of abuse that she is now presenting. So I thought that this testimony was in my opinion, beneficial more in my opinion for the defense. On redirect exam, the state went up and just went and gave scenarios that they have already presented so far, like being dragged in the hair on the street, all of those things being physical violence. So we heard testimony about being hit or having bruises, or all of those things, having been choked, all of those things. But we also heard, those testimonies came from people that depends a lot on their credibility, especially the testimony from the responding officer, Sutton. That is all dependent on his credibility. So how much the points could be scored from the state on that redirect remains to be seen, because a lot of those testimony, that a lot of the scenarios that she was highlighting came from testimony that could be easily dismissed as unreliable. And that was the bulk of her testimony. So now let's move on to the next witness that was up, and this is this witness. She goes by the name of Carol Terry, and she was the chief medical examiner back in 1999, and she gave testimony that she was a medical examiner with that John Parker was the medical examiner that examined the remains of Melissa, and she was basically just taking on his report. She also testified her involvement in this particular case came from February 2000 when she was examining another skull in another case. She testified to documenting the documenting of the autopsy process, and shows the chain of custody when communicating autopsies. Game said, before I continue, Game said, I heard Christopher had weakness in his limbs, but don't know how come. I hope it's a football game or something like that. Anyway, so okay, oh yeah, I do remember this. I read somewhere that he was hit by a train. I also remember reading somewhere that he fell off a ladder, so I'm not sure. Damn, that's a lot. That is a lot. I don't know how Christopher lost his legs, so if he does testify, I'm pretty sure they're going to make that a massive thing. I am 100%. I am surprised that he wasn't given a bond hearing, despite to this whole a bond, that he wasn't allowed to be released on a bond based on this whole leg thing. You would think that he would be allowed, but I guess it's because of the nature of the crime that it wasn't accepted. Anyway, continuing on, she testifies to initially examining the skull on June 1999, and she testified that the skull had fractures. She also tried to bring in the testimony in regards to how she thought that the skull was a female skull or it belonged to a female, but it wasn't allowed to be brought in because it would have been speculation. She's not a proper expert. She is a fact witness, so that would have been speculation, I'm guessing. She also gave testimony that the skull was somehow protected from flies. You know, the head that was found in the bag, and she gave a theory or hypothesis that because it was in the bag, the flies could not have access to go and lay eggs on the head to essentially have maggots eat on it. So I felt like this testimony was kind of important because we saw from the Nicholas Casares testimony that it would have brought in an etymologist to try and ascertain the life of those maggots being on the head. She also testifies that it made it harder to determine the time of death because of it being stored in a plastic bag, as it affects decomposition. She testifies also that there were saw cutting marks that was on the remains, and she also gave testimony to not seeing any carnivorous activity, so no animals eating the body parts, the remains, etc. She testifies that in her opinion, the cause of death was undetermined, and I do think that this is where I gotta give the they have learned, at least the state have learned a little bit. I gotta give them props for at least crunching down on why this undetermined cause of death is not detrimental. And she basically said that she couldn't determine the cause of death because there was just not enough remains to make that determination. They didn't even have the torso, and the state was asking her questions. Could you determine if it was a choking or a stabbing? And she says nope, because of the dismemberment and the decomposition. She couldn't ascertain whether it was whether the victim had been stabbed or choked. So, and she also said that it's likely that the dismemberment was done post-mortem, meaning after death, because it's very hard to dismember someone while they're alive. So before she continued, the judge had ruled that DNA results that she had overseen could not come in. She had overseen it, but she wasn't the one that conducted the results. And it seems like the person that conducted the DNA testing back then is either deceased or just unavailable or untraceable for whatever reason. So because they're not in court, it cannot be admissible because you can't determine the authenticity. So I'm guessing that they would have known who they thought or whose DNA was on it at the time. Hello trial channel, welcome. Good to see you here. Hope you have a good day. She also, so after the judge had made that ruling, the witness came back up and she testifies that she met Carl Patton on the 18th of 2003, on the 18th of March 2003 and collected swabs from her, and she testified that the remains of Melissa, that Melissa's extremities were not swabbed, but it was submitted for DNA testing. So at least the state has done well to kind of get rid of the idea that Norma Patton could have been involved in this, because they swabbed for a DNA, and I mean it wasn't determined if she was excluded from it. I'm guessing that would have been the DNA results that they tried to bring in, and it was unsuccessful. So that was the bulk of her testimony. The defense highlights that there was no copies of X-rays present on the cross-examination, and I thought that this goes back to Dave Kelly, who was testifying in regards to missing files. This part was kind of a throwback to that, and she basically gave testimony that as time goes on, things would update.
We met just a couple of weeks ago, I believe it was, or
Yes, we did.
okay, and that was at your office.
That is correct.
We discussed several aspects about the case.
Yes, we did.
Okay. What methods again did you use to determine the identity of the skull?
The method that was used to determine the identity of the skull was dental.
And did you mention that you did X-rays?
Yes, X-rays were taken, or I had taken X-rays taken in the medical examiner's office,
Okay.
and that was to establish the dental.
And when you establish the identity through methods such as that, is it important to keep records?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And do you normally keep records when you do something like that?
Yes, records are kept in the medical examiner's office.
And did you preserve the X-rays in this case?
The X-rays should be preserved at the medical examiner's office, the Fulton County Medical Examiner's office, yes.
And are you aware that no medical or no X-rays exist in this case currently?
I'm not aware of that, but there have been changes in the regimes over the years, and at that point in time, there was the hard copy X-rays, and we kept those X-rays there. Now, I have not worked in that office since 2004, so I don't know, but they were there at the time I left the office, and now so many things are digital, but those X-rays were there at the time I left the office.
Goes back again to reliability. How reliable are these witnesses? This is your last witness, by the way, and we have seen so many blunders. We even saw one again yesterday in regards to the testimony by the anthropologist, who I thought was the most reliable one. He was very honest, but he gave testimony that was really damning, that the person that was examining the skull and had made the mistake was examining other skulls from another case, and he felt like that influences his decision. So the mess ups here, even if you want to give this woman grace, you just kind of have to think they don't even have, because the X-rays, at least I'm guessing here, it would have showed the fractures that she's referring to now. It would have showed the fractures that because the theory is, at least she could have been able to testify that maybe the fractures could have been caused by getting hit up the head and onto the ground. But because she doesn't have the X-rays to proper examine and show right there, she cannot give you the exact scenario. So again, what are we actually doing here if you don't even know how this person died? You don't even know how the perpetrator may have done this. And there are records that has been destroyed along the way. It's a case that it's a sad case, simply because of the fact that you gotta consider the fact that this victim is likely not gonna get justice ever, because of the mess ups back then. And like I said, there have been previous cases back in the 90s that has been run much better than this. And it begs the question, why would the state open this up just based on a hunch? It's literally just a hunch based on all the testimonies that we've heard. Is literally on a hunch. They don't even have the DNA that could say, okay, this is enough. This is enough. They don't even have DNA tying back. Anyway, so I want to go back to yesterday's testimony in regards to what's his name, Jarion Shepherd, and highlight the part that I thought had tanked the case, or he had basically tanked the case. So it was in the beginning of the cross-examination. Let's watch.
My name is Don Samuel. I don't believe we've ever met before.
I've met you in passing before.
The second one to say that. You joined the cold case squad in 2020, did I get that right?
Approximately, yes.
Okay. And when did you pick up Calhoun's reports and start looking at this case?
2021.
Okay. So in 2021, we are essentially 23 years after, for example, the first thing you testified about, I think, was the July TPO, right?
Correct.
Okay. Obviously, you weren't there then. You didn't have, contemporaneous evidence of what happened on that day, right? You didn't interview any of the witnesses.
That's correct.
That led to the TPO, correct?
Correct.
Now, when I say TPO, I'm talking about a temporary protective order.
That's correct.
And you introduced some exhibits this morning. Yes, this morning, dealing with that TPO, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So what you learned from reading Calhoun's reports and what led you to think the TPO was important was that there was an argument, correct? There was a dispute?
Yes, there was a physical dispute that resulted in Melissa Wolfenbarger's injuries.
It resulted in?
Her injuries?
Okay. Did you interview someone named Perone who was involved in that?
No, I never got a chance to interview Ms. Perone.
Okay. And did you talk to the law enforcement officer who went to the scene, whose name is Sutton, I believe?
No, every officer during that time, by the time I received the case, pretty much retired. But I was referring to his actual police reports that were documented.
Well, he came here. It wasn't that hard to find him. He came here and testified. Did you ever talk to him?
No, sir, I never was able to talk to officers.
Were you aware that he said he never saw any bruises on her back?
The only thing I had to refer to is it wasn't the actual police report that he documented when the incident occurred.
Right. Well, he didn't document what he saw. And when he testified, he said, I didn't lift up her shirt or look at anything on her back. I didn't see any. In fact, he said she had some bruises on her legs.
To counsel testifying.
I'm cross-examining him.
Yeah, I'm gonna overrule the objection.
I have no direct knowledge to his testimony when he testified in here.
So if in fact his testimony is different than what you said this morning, obviously you don't question his credibility when he came here and testified under oath.
I think Officer Sutton will have to be the one to speak on that. As far as his credibility, I can refer to the documents that were documented in the official police report.
Okay. And do you know from the official police report whether the officer or anybody interviewed Mr. Wolfenbarger that night?
Not sure. I don't have any reports that stating that either.
Or Mr. Perone that night?
There are no police reports that's documenting that day.
Okay. So you have Sutton's police report, which is inconsistent with the testimony he gave to the jury, and that's it as far as what led to the temporary protective order.
Again, I can't testify to Officer Sutton's testimony that he testified in here. Only thing I have to go by is what he documented in his police report.
Okay. All right. Now, as a result of whatever happened that day in July something like 22nd, right, 1998, Ms. Wolfenbarger was encouraged to take out a TPO, correct?
Yes, after she was assaulted and dragged by Christopher Wolfenbarger and received the injuries. Usually when there's a domestic dispute, we always refer to the victim in that domestic. That's an option that they can go and seek as a temporary protective order for further protection.
Can I ask you to do me a favor?
Yes,
when
sir.
I ask you a question, you can answer yes or no. Okay?
Cool? Okay.
All right?
Yes, sir.
If you think it's a deceptive answer and you need to explain it, that's fine. But, you don't know what happened that night. You just know what's in the police report, right?
Correct. The only thing I know is what's documented in the police report.
Okay. By the way, did you even try to find Officer Sutton?
I have the official police reports that I can refer to, and that's usually what happens. A lot of cold cases, we don't reach out to those the officers that officially responded to the first scene. We go by the police reports.
Okay. So at any rate, it was customary to refer Ms. Wolfenbarger to get a TPO, correct? A temporary protective order.
Yes, sir. Anytime there's a domestic dispute and the victim of that domestic dispute.
Sir, I just asked you a yes/no question. She was referred to get a TPO, correct?
Yes, she was correct.
You want to make a speech every time I ask you a question, or just say yes or no if you can, all right?
Are you asking me, sir?
Not really. So she takes out a TPO on what day?
We have to refer to the actual document again if we want to get the exact date.
Things are getting zesty. Just fast forward it a little bit.
Do you have the date that the TPO is taken out?
As soon as I find a TPO, I can give you the exact date. It looks like it was July 2nd, 1998. July 22nd, I'm sorry.
22nd, okay.
Correct.
And then what a TPO does is, that's just ask the court to set down a hearing, correct?
But TPO is, again, another form of documentation along with the police report where they document through the court that this person that's filing the TPO needs protection from the person that they're trying to get protection from.
Right, but it has to be followed very quickly by a court hearing, correct?
Well, that depends on the court.
Okay.
But once it's filed and it's enacted, the person, we have a court hearing, they're served, and at that point they're served with that temporary protective order. They have strict orders not to violate that temporary protective order.
How long did the TPO in this case exist before they went to court for the first time?
Do you have the documents? Okay.
This guy, I know he's trying to be smart, but he
Was
just
dismissed on July 29th, 1998,
So about 1 week later, correct?
according to the documents. That's correct.
You have the rule nisi there?
I do.
Okay, rule nisi is just a Latin term that lawyers use to say, come to court, right? Show cause, come to court,
Okay.
right?
I don't speak Latin, but I'm assuming if you're saying that, that's correct.
I appreciate your confidence in me. So they go to court and the TPO is dismissed, correct?
That is correct.
And that doesn't happen without a judge sitting on the bench, correct?
Correct. And usually when it's dismissed, one of the parties are not showing up. Just like when any court case, when the party doesn't show up, it's dismissed.
But every party's here for this. For the TPO dismissal, everybody's in court.
Okay.
And in fact, were you aware from talking to people that the judge encouraged them to talk to each other? They talked to each other, and then the judge dismissed the TPO.
I'm not surprised in court hearings.
I didn't ask if you were surprised. I asked, are you aware that that's what happened?
I'm not aware.
Well, did you ever interview anybody about what happened in that court proceeding?
It's pertaining to the TPO?
Yes.
No, sir. The TPO is not related. It's not part of my murder investigation. It documents of first form of interaction that documents the domestic violence between Christopher Wolfenbarger and Melissa. As far as a homicide investigation, it's not relevant going into the homicide. So there was no reason for you to follow up for it pertaining to this domestic.
So we went through all the interviews. Sorry, not the interviews. We went through all the questioning that was done to that, and he was saying it's very important to go through the report. It's very important to go through, to not rely on, like it doesn't matter what Officer Sutton testified to. That is the report that they're relying on for the investigation, because it's very relevant for the case, that because they take every victim's testimony seriously. And now, because he didn't follow up and try to find out more information, he says that a TPO is not really important. That is not important for the homicide investigation that they're doing, because they wouldn't need to follow up. They wouldn't need to follow up, because the TPO is not important for the homicide investigation. That was important for the homicide investigation is trying to figure out the murder. So the TPO and the violence is not important.
Are you saying that all the domestic things involved in July 1998 has nothing to do with the investigation of the homicide?
The July 1998 incident is very critical, and it documents and it landmarks a tumultuous relationship between Christopher and Melissa. So it is very important.
So you didn't follow up. Why didn't you follow
You just
up?
said it's not relevant. I'm confused between your last two answers. You said you didn't follow up anything about the background of it, anything about what happened in court, anything about any of that, because it's not relevant to the homicide, but then you say it's the landmark most important thing.
That is correct. So when you document an incident domestic, it's documented. It's a homicide investigation. We continue with our homicide investigation. We have reliability when we refer to the police reports, which is official documents. That's documented in time. There's no need me to follow up on the domestic side, because we have it clearly documented in the police reports. My investigation continues from the homicide on.
Okay.
So it's not important.
You don't disagree, though, that even the documents show that the judge approved the dismissal of the TPO. The judge signs it.
And these are legal documents, and I definitely approve of it.
Okay. You then talked about having interviewed Mr. Wolfenbarger in, the first time was in 2020.
That's okay. So that's all I wanted to play, because he, like I said, he just undermined his case right here and there, because the jury, I would imagine, are thinking, well, if he did not seek more information into these domestics to try and find a pattern to see if it occurred again, try to ascertain a bit more information, then maybe, just maybe, it's not relevant for the murder that they are trying to convict, because it's just acts that cannot be connected to this, as he just basically testified to, that they're looking at the homicide part, that information is important, it is critical, but we are looking for the homicide. So the jury are gonna be, they're literally going to infer that they should be looking for what could have caused the homicide too. And if it's not the domestic violence that they're basing everything on, if that's not the motive, or if that's not the reason why Chris would do this, if she didn't die for domestic violence reasons, what are we actually doing here? That's the whole case for you. That's literally always presented. We're not gonna end here. I'm gonna go through the timeline of events, but the state are gonna rest tomorrow. So this is all we have. The weirdest case. I mean, I thought Karen Reed was bad, and I thought, why would that end up in court? But at least, I mean, I can't even. I would say this is on par, because the evidence for Karen Reed to end up in court, especially with the homicide determination, that didn't make sense. But I guess, but this one is even worse, because it doesn't even have anything linking back to Christopher. Anyway, let's go through the timeline of events so far, because the states have rested. Well, not rested. They are going to rest tomorrow, but I'm guessing. But the state are going to rest tomorrow, so I'm guessing that what we have here, there's not going to be any new information. So I've compiled this in case. So On the 9th of September 1977, Melissa was born. I now recorded this because it was on her identification. It was recorded as 1970 when the I believe it was the medical. No, not the medical. I believe it was under Pete Ricketts' testimony, or no, it wasn't Pete Ricketts. It was Miss Upti's testimony that she was recorded as 1990. So I had to put that in there to show her real day of birth. 15th of August 1995. That's when Christina was born. That is the daughter of Christopher. That's when she was born, and she gave testimony, so that's why it was relevant. On the 16th of July 1996, Joey was born as well. On 1995-1996, and I put an asterisk there because there wasn't a really timeline is established of when they got married. So, but yeah, Chris and Melissa were married sometime in 1998. Melissa reports DV to the police. Like, I know it's 1998, so I can't say with an asterisk, but Melissa reports DV to the police. We don't know when this was. I have to delete this because that was an inconclusive search. On the 21st of July 1998, there was a potential domestic violence battery incident between Melissa and Christopher. This is where the dragging of the hair comes from. This is where the choking and all of that come from, and it was from Dorothy Cooley's testimony. Then on the 22nd of July 1998, Melissa applies for a temporary protective order. Then on the 29th of July 1998, temporary protective order was dismissed after both Christopher and Melissa discussed amongst themselves. On August 1998, Melissa leaves Christopher. This is according to Noah Patton's testimony. On the 9th of September 1998, Melissa was locked up in county jail. Around this time as well, Christopher and Melissa had hooked back up, but I don't know the exact date that was supposed to have happened. October 1998, Christopher Wolfenbarger begins his employment at Action Glass. October 1998, Melissa was rearrested due to violating her probation. On the 9th of November 1998, Melissa was released from DeKalb County Jail. Melissa was pregnant at this time as well. Norma Patton says that she sees Melissa for the last time on this day. On the 24th of November 1998, Norma speaks with Melissa. So this was from Alton Calhoun's testimony that Norma had interacted with Melissa around Thanksgiving. On the 10th of December 1998, there was no contact was made with Melissa's probation officer by Melissa. So the probation officer never received any messages back from Melissa. So this is when people thought that she started going missing. December 1998, Thomas Dixon, also known as Mike, sees Melissa. So again, when did he see him? We don't know because this prosecution did not ask any questions. February 1999, Carl Patton goes to the Waffle House to inquire of Melissa's whereabouts. 15th of March 1999, Melissa did not report to the court hearing on this day for a battery hearing against Christopher. I should put an asterisk next to this as well. February and March 1999, Christopher says he last saw Melissa looking rough. He took her to Taco Bell and was boarding the train to Marta, the train at Marta Station. On the 29th of April 1999, Melissa's head was found at Avon Avenue. February 1999, Christopher Wolfenbarger was fired from Action Glass for vandalism on one of their vehicles. He never returned the saw he had borrowed. On June 1999, other remains were found, like the leg, such as the leg. Such as the leg was located. Damn it, my English is bad here. Let me just change that in real time. Just remove that. Yeah, other remains were found. For example, the leg and the skull was analyzed and determined to be belonging to a male. 12th of January 2000, Pete Ricketts speak with Norma Patton. There was no missing persons report made at this time. And this is the part that I thought was this is a bit more context here. And Pete Ricketts only became involved due to Kelly recommending the case to him because of an idea that this person was missing. So on October 2000 was when Melissa was reported as missing based on Alton Calhoun's testimony and Pete Ricketts' testimony. There's when I heard this testimony as well, I was really flabbergasted as to how he would have got in contact with the parents, because no one had reported her missing at that point. So this was where the confusion came in, because this is where Norma was saying that she was reported missing around 1999, and the defense were also saying that she was only reported missing in 2000, a year after the remains were found. And Alton Calhoun and Pete Ricketts, the guy that done the interview, they both said that the report right here, that she was reported missing in October. On the 22nd of February 2001, Pete speaks with Norma and Carl Patton to inform them that they have generated leads to find Melissa. 26th of February 2001. Pete speaks with Richard and Virginia Autry, the grandparents of Christopher Wolfenbarger, in regards to Melissa. 12th of September 2001, Pete Ricketts interviews Christopher in connection with Melissa's disappearance. On the 30th of December 2001, Melissa's dental records were inputted into a system to aid in locating of Melissa. I don't know when this was, so I'll just remove that. March 2003, asterisk again, Thomas Dixon informs law enforcement of what Melissa had told him about her tumultuous relationship with Chris and the marks he had observed. I put an asterisk there because the 2003 date was not determined, and I had to listen to the interviews that was done with by Pete Ricketts, and I come to understand that Thomas had spoke to Pete in March. The date wasn't given or the year wasn't given, but he had spoken with Pete. That's what I understood. Well, at least law enforcement. 13th of March 2003, Melissa was identified based on the dental records. 14th of March 2003, Melissa was properly identified. 14th of March 2003, Detective Calhoun canvasses the neighborhood campus. 18th of March 2003, Christopher is interviewed the second time by Pete. Norma Patton, on the 18th, the same day, Norma Patton was swabbed by the medical examiner. And on the 15th of April 2003, the Detective Calhoun interviews Mike in connection with the investigation. So this was when I'm guessing it was likely when he shared this information to law enforcement. It was this interview, but I can't say it was this exact interview because of the fact that he said it was March. So because Thomas Dixon said it was March, the Detective Calhoun interviewed Mike on the 15th. You can kind of put together the inconsistency. July 2003, Calhoun processes the crime into the system. In 2021, I did not know. We did not get the exact podcast date and time, but Norma Patton and Tina May conducts podcast interviews in the bid to have the case looked by the DA. They have been campaigning since 2016. So they have had a lot of podcast appearances, but this is what came out in court, and I'm only using that as part of my timeline. On the 5th of May 2021, Christopher was interviewed by investigators Layton and Jarian. On February 2023, Chris was interviewed a second time by the investigators. Damn it. On the 6th of August 2024, Christopher was arrested, and we're here in the present day. So that is literally this case almost wrapped up. We don't know I don't think Chris is going to take the stand. I would be extremely surprised if he takes the stand. I don't think he even needs to. There's nothing here. He will just be opening himself up to just have bad facts be brought to him. But like I always say, I really hope that he does take the stand and testify in his defense. I want everyone that has been accused of a crime to take the stand, no matter good or bad it might look. But it's their right, and we gotta respect that. But at the same time, it's something that I would like to see. I would want to see him testify to where he was around that time, when he left. I think that there's some good facts working for him, especially with Cooley saying that he had inspected his house and he was already gone from the neighborhood on February 1999. So I should have put that in the timeline. Damn it! I knew I forgot something. I'll update the timeline tomorrow. But yeah, so that's a very important fact to consider, because he had already moved out. So at one point did he essentially see Melissa? That's up for debate. Did he last see her in December or February before he had moved out? Up for debate. Thank you so much. Thank you ever so much, Games. I appreciate you for this $5 super chat. Thank you so much. I appreciate you too. I appreciate that you enjoy these recaps. Thank you for tuning in. And I appreciate you supporting the channel. So let me we are gonna run a poll tomorrow. I'm gonna be going through the best part depending on how tomorrow goes. I'm going to be replaying the key moments from this testimony and the closing arguments. And so the same time tomorrow, make sure that you tune in 6 p.m. Eastern time. I will let you guys know in the community area, so keep your eyes out on there. Thank you to all the new members. I really do appreciate the support. It really does keep me going, because it just I'm just glad that you guys get a lot of value from these streams. I enjoy doing them. But so thanks for that. Make sure that you check out the description. That's where the links are to get the documents. And also make sure that you check out Lexi the Lawner. She actually puts the testimonies into a text form recap. So if you follow her on Twitter, you will get it as it happens live. So so make sure you check her out on Twitter. So so without further, I'm gonna say thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you so much for our channel for saying that. I appreciate you as well. Thank you. You guys are making me blush tonight. I know you guys can't see it, so just imagine my face going red. Just imagine it. But so I'm gonna leave it there. Have a great evening or day wherever you're at. I go by the name of Hines, your friendly neighborhood ketchup man. Don't forget to hit that like button. Lurkers, thank you for tuning in. Say hi next time. And also, if you're watching this back on replay, let me know how you're feeling in the comments. Thank you so much again for tuning in. Take good care of yourself. Bye for now. Thank you everyone for tuning in for another Catch Up Court live stream. Make sure that you smash that like button as well as hitting that subscribe button to be notified of our future live streams. We go live regularly, bringing you case updates and recaps of ongoing trials, so make sure you hurry back on the next live stream. We also have more content on the channel that you can binge on. Check out the playlist that we have showcasing all of these contents. Without further, I go by the name of Hines, your friendly neighborhood ketchup man, and I'll see you back in court.